Okay, so you ever just come across a town name and think, who came up with that?
Uh-huh. Yeah, all the time.
Right. Well, today we're diving into one of those: Helensvale, Queensland, Australia. Given your urban planning background, this one is right up your alley.
Oh, is it a planned city?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Practically built from scratch in the 70s. Right on the edge of the Gold Coast hinterland, where the coast meets the mountains.
Interesting. I didn't realize there was so much development going on there in the
Well,
70s.
that's what makes this place so fascinating. But first, the name itself, Helensvale. It's actually pretty charming when you hear where it comes from.
Okay, where's it from?
So picture this. It's the 1870s, and you've got the sugar plantation owner. He decides to name the area Helensvale after. You ready for it? His sister, Lena.
Oh, that's sweet. It's really interesting how back then people had such strong personal connections to their land.
Totally. And it's not just a sweet story. It actually gives us a glimpse into a pivotal era in Queensland. What do you think was significant about the 1870s there?
Well, the 1870s, that was really when sugar plantations were booming. I mean, they were the lifeblood of the region, shaped the economy, how towns were laid out.
And you can actually still see that plantation past reflected in the layout of towns like Helensvale today, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Those original plantation boundaries often ended up dictating things like, well, how the streets were laid out, even how the land was used. So even in a modern town, you're seeing these layers of history kind of embedded in the urban fabric. It's fascinating.
It really is. So we've got this charming name with a historical tie to sugar plantations. But then in the 1970s, things get even more interesting. Tell us about the Helensvale project.
Right, so picture this, the 1970s. This company, Oxenford Holdings, they come in with like this incredibly ambitious plan. They want to transform these huge tracts of land into a fully self-contained suburb. That's the Helensville project.
And get this, they were actually ahead of schedule. That almost never happens, even back then with those massive projects.
Wow, really? That's unheard of.
Right. What's really mind-blowing is the scale. They were planning for 10,000 residents.
10,000. That's a whole town.
Exactly. And they weren't just thinking about housing, schools, shops. They even planned for a golf course. And all of it designed with the idea that it would serve not just Helensvale, but the wider surrounding areas too. It's like they were looking decades into the future.
So I've got to ask, did this meticulously planned approach actually work? Did it create a better quality of life for the residents compared to, say, towns that evolved more organically?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's really a complex issue with valid arguments on both sides.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, you have the efficiency and the foresight of a well-designed community. I mean, everything's in its place right from the start. But on the other hand, some might say that it lacks that certain something that you get from a town that's grown more organically over time, that character, that charm.
I know what you mean. It's like comparing, say, a wildflower meadow to a perfectly manicured garden.
Yes, exactly. Both have their own unique beauty. And from the sounds of it, Helensvale really achieved that manicured garden look.
They really did.
Hmm.
Today, Helensvale has it all. Shopping centers, schools, that golf course we talked about.
Yeah.
It really shows how they took that initial vision and made it a reality. But here's where things take a really fascinating turn.
What's that?
Well, despite being this planned urban environment, carefully designed and all that, Helensvale is right next to the Kumbaba Lake and Nature Reserve. This area is known for its biodiversity. It's an interesting juxtaposition, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. You've got this town that's essentially bordered by this significant natural space. It really highlights the challenges a lot of places are facing these days when you say balancing growth with conservation.
Exactly. So how do you manage urban sprawl while still preserving these crucial ecosystems?
Mhm.
Can Helensvale, with its unique setup, find a way to leverage its proximity to nature, maybe through ecotourism or something? These are the really important questions for its future.
You've given us so much to think about. I mean, we've gone from a sweet story about a town named after someone's sister to this incredible feat of urban planning, and now this really complex question of how to exist in harmony with nature.
It really makes you think.
It really does. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Happy to be here.
And to all our listeners out there, have you ever lived in a planned community? What are your thoughts on this balance between urban development and nature? Let us know because we'd love to keep this conversation going.